Okay, number one Marmaduke fan here, and we're finally going to do it. We're going to talk about Frieren Beyond Journey's End, Volume 1. I got into this because of internet meme discourse around it concerning how demons are represented. I don't want to talk about demons in this video because we'll talk about demons when demons actually come up in the story. Really, I just want to talk about Frieren Beyond Journey's End because it's a top-tier book. It almost immediately jumped into my top favorite fantasies of all time. It's one of the hot new animes for a reason. This is one I successfully recommended to my normie family members who don't like anime, and they were able to get into it and see the appeal of it. It's got things I like from anime and manga, like really smart fight sequences, extremely good art, but it doesn't have maybe some of the foibles that are only particular to anime. So let's hop in. So our main character, Frieren, the central premise is she's an elf, which means she's lived over 1,000 years. But then as we build on that, that has given her a very particular way of looking at the world. To her, 50 years feels like, a few weeks, right? A summer vacation is 50 years to her. And that has negative consequences. Most obviously is she goes on a 50-year journey, and when she comes back, all her friends are old men now, because she didn't really stop to think about what 50 years meant to them. So Frieren is simultaneously very old, someone with hundreds of years of life experience, but kind of a young, silly teenager in other ways. So what's interesting is you'd think this would be like a very hard character to relate to. She's literally inhuman in the way she looks at the world. But the genius of the story is that every little chapter functions as a short story to show you some of her perspective, so that you you start to get a feel for her and start to be able to see the world through her eyes a little more. So we open with her and her friends, Himmel the hero, Eisen the warrior, and Heiter the corrupt priest have killed the Demon King and are coming back as heroes. It's as if it would be like if Lord of the Rings opened with immediately after the fall of Sauron's tower. They're greeted as heroes, of course, but they converse about their reflections and their memories on their journey together. And one of the things I love is the little details. Even the little comedic details fit into the grander theme. So one little running gag is that even though Frieren's very smart, she'll consistently fall for the same kind of silly magical traps over and over again, because she's kind of greedy for treasure. So she is very smart, but her foibles cause her to miss things that should be obvious to her. The heroes have this grand reputation, but they were actually kind of a gaggle of morons who didn't really know what they were doing at first when they set out, and ended up managing to kill the Demon King. So the way people perceive them is different from their actual lived experiences and their memories of their adventure together. Frieren leaves for 50 years and comes back, and Himmel the hero is now a little old man. And they have one last little adventure together before he dies. And Himmel's death affects Frieren in a way she wasn't expecting. She only spent 10 years with him. That's almost nothing to her. Why is she crying at his funeral? So really what's happening is Frieren is gradually becoming more self-aware. She's kind of a cold and withdrawn personality, at least in the way she presents herself to people. But she really does care about her friends and care about her experiences. And so it's kind of the fact that she is an elf and doesn't really understand human time or the human frame of reference that's created this tragedy. Her friend died before she really got to know him. And then as the story progresses from this point on, it's her continually reflecting back on her previous experiences as she is now having to she ends up being the only one who really can go on. Himmel dies. Heiter, his drinking habit catches up with him, and he eventually dies. Eisen is alive, but he's getting older, and he's kind of not at the point where he can swing an axe like he used to anymore. And so she becomes the only one who's capable of still adventuring. When she gathers younger heroes to her cause, there's a lot of them have an interesting connection to her old friends. So continually over and over again, it's like the past and the present and the future. And Frieren is our connection between all of these different elements. So Frieren, after the death of Himmel the hero, starts journeying again. She meets with Heiter, and Heiter's taken in an orphan who he her parents were killed by, I don't know if it's said specifically whether they were killed by monsters or demons or what, but her parents were killed somehow, and Heiter, the corrupt priest, has taken Fern in. And he kind of basically hoodwinks Frieren into agreeing to train Fern for him. So the narrative thrust of the story is how Himmel the hero, who's kind of like the central we start with Himmel the hero being dead in like the first 30 pages, but his presence is felt continually throughout the story. So Himmel the hero is someone who taught Heiter, who's a pretty selfish and maybe like a Epicurean type person, loves his drink. He taught Heiter how to care about other people so that Heiter could become the kind of person who would take in an orphan and help her out. And then when Frieren agrees to take on Fern, she realizes, I guess Himmel really did change me in some ways. So let's talk a bit about Fern. So Fern, who's now our first young character who's introduced to the adventuring party, starts out as like a little girl with like a very urgent mission. She wants to learn magic so that she can make her adopted father proud and let him die in peace, knowing she's going to be okay. But being a mage is very dangerous work. It's easy to get killed in this line of work. She starts out as a little kid, and then after kind of like a little time skip, Fern becomes 16 years old and is now taller and in some ways more mature than Frieren. So if Frieren started out as the big sister protege type, once Fern grows up and starts learning more magic, Fern has to take on some more almost maternal responsibilities for Frieren. It's sort of like you growing up a little and maturing a little faster than your big sister did. But Fur still, even though Fur she sees herself as a very good girl and kind of a goody two-shoes and very responsible. Because she's young, she's still inexperienced and maybe a little bit black and white, maybe a little too much of a bossy goody two-shoes, but in how she treats people. But Fern is bright, and she's learning a lot from Frieren. All right, so they have an adventure together where Frieren visits one of the villages that their group of heroes saved, and they have a statue for Himmel the hero. And she wants to plant flowers there. And Frieren spends 6 months looking for these flowers. And so it's like, again, it's like the reason this works is it clicks with something in real life. For a child, every second feels like an eternity. For an adult, if you blink in a year, wow, another year passed, it's Christmas already? What the heck happened? So for Frieren, because she's 1,000 years old, time almost doesn't seem to exist for her. But for Fern, 6 months is a significant chunk of her life. And she talks to a little old lady about this, and the little old lady, comments that, you're so young. Every little detail is feeding into this theme of the old, young, and our different perspectives. Gosh, I'm gushing because what's interesting about it is it's presenting a lot of ideas compactly. Like you could read in this and get new ideas out of it with every reread. So that's why I'm struggling to formulate my thought here. But eventually, Fern communicates that, I don't want to spend years of my life looking for a flower. And finally, at the last minute, they do find the flower that Frieren is looking for. Now, Fern doesn't know too much about what the heck is going on in Frieren's head. It's sort of like Fern's trying to figure Frieren out, and Frieren isn't super forthcoming. We see through flashback what Frieren is thinking about and reflecting on. So for Frieren, these blue flowers have significance because Himmel once gave her some of those blue flowers and praised her for her magical studies. So that kind of changed her lease on life, and she became more interested in actually studying magic and not floating through life like she used to. I will talk a little bit, I'm not going to talk about every single story, but I will talk a little bit about the demon fight with, what's his name? His magic is called Zoltrak Qual. Qual is the demon mage. So 80 years ago, Qual was one of the most powerful demons in the Demon King's army. He developed killing magic. I won't spoil the end of the story. You really should read this. I want to talk about how this is using magic in an interesting way. So the two schools of thought in how to use magical narrative would be magic as mythic and mysterious. You don't study magic. Magic isn't a science. Magic is weird fairies out in the woods who you shouldn't touch. Another school of thought would be magic is a science. We can study this. We can figure out how it works and apply it rationally. And Frieren kind of scratches both of those itches. So magic is a science. You can learn from it and develop it. And the way they defeat Qual is he was frozen for 80 years and magic has developed in that time. So it's exactly like inventing the gun and then inventing better armor to defend against the gun. Magic as a school of thought gets better and better and better as people refine it. At the same time, there's this deep mystical element to Frieren where we don't know where magic comes from. They don't know where souls go when they die. And towards the end, there's a whole subplot where they figure out that heaven is a real place and you can go there. So they actually are making discoveries about their world as the story progresses. But that whole idea of heaven as a place you can literally walk to in the distant north is a very mystical idea. Anything else? There are some other very sweet little stories that kind of show how Fern and Frieren are gradually building more of a connection. And every one of them ties back to her memories with Himmel. Himmel, in some ways, I think, taught her how to... She's sort of like a weird immortal elf. And Himmel kind of taught her how to be a human, how to connect with people, how to care about people and maybe like live her life more meaningfully. Now, in the future, she's still kind of a goofball and wanders through life a little bit. She still has some of those same personality flaws, but she's more directed now because of her experiences. And now she's in a position where she can have a mentor role for a younger generation. I will talk about this. So the last couple of chapters are setting up Flame the Mage, who is a legendary mage in this time, and to Frieren was just like a silly lady who taught her how to do magic, right? So again, her perspective on things are very different than humanity's perspective. So they stop at a grave and Heiter prays. This is a really bizarre, really interesting scene, because what happens is he effectively makes an extremely bad argument for why he believes in heaven, but the characters resonate with it. So I'm going to make like my personal interpretation of this scene. So clearly the inspiration for the religion in Frieren is, German European culture. He looks like a Catholic priest. The inspiration is Christianity, but it's not Christianity in this world. They worship a goddess. We don't know too much about the goddess and the doctrines, but Heiter's comment is we go to heaven because he wants to believe we go to heaven, even if he's not sure heaven exists. And they even comment that, that's not what a priest should be saying. All right. So let's talk about each character. Eisen the dwarf, very earthy kind of guy. He believes in the dwarf traditions that when we die, we return to nothing. Annihilationism. There is no immortal soul. Heiter wants to believe we go to heaven, even if he's not sure. Frieren is sort of a neutral agnostic. She doesn't have any scientific evidence for or against the existence of souls or a heaven. And Himmel just doesn't really know for sure or care that much. Himmel's kind of like Ishmael. He's more concerned about what's immediately in front of him than theological questions. So Heiter says, I don't care if heaven exists or not. But even if it doesn't exist, I think it's something that should. Wouldn't it be nicer to think that they're indulging in luxury up in heaven? And then all three of them kneel down and pray with him. It's a very bizarre scene, and this is a very Japanese kind of scene. So what's interesting about this is, from a Western perspective, this is an extremely bad argument for the existence of heaven. This is the kind of thing a fedora would say, you stupid Christians, you just think you're going to eat a bunch of cakes up in heaven float on clouds playing harps. So this is a bad argument for heaven, but Heiter believes in it in his own way. And because they know Heiter, they resonate with that, and they come to want to believe in it too, even if they're not sure they believe in it. So what's interesting about that is this is kind of like the opposite of what a fedora thinks. A fedora would say, this is a stupid idea of heaven, I don't want to believe in it. Heiter kind of bluntly says, this is my stupid idea of what I think heaven is. And his authenticity speaks to them. And even if they don't believe in it, they want to believe in it. It's a very, very intriguing scene to me, because it's sort of like, as a person, it's as though the author is someone who's outside of Christianity and probably not a Christian, But as they look at it, they see the beauty in it and they kind of want it to be true, even if they're not sure if it is true. There's an old story about a Christian theologian and a Japanese philosopher theologian talking about Christianity. And the Japanese theologian's argument was, well, of course we believe in Christianity. We wouldn't want to be rude, which frustrated the Western theologian because that's basically syncretism. We want to believe in all the different gods. We don't want to be rude to any one of them. Whereas in, actual Christian doctrine, Christ would be singularly, it's monotheism. Christ is the creator of everything, right? But then what's interesting about that is even if the Japanese perspective isn't always a Christian perspective, it's respectful to the Christian perspective in a very bizarre way. Okay, one more interesting thing. So many things interconnect. So another interesting about this is he wants to believe that if you endure to the end, there will be something, which ties into his story with Fern, where Fern was ready to kill herself because she had no one left, and he urged her to carry on her memories. So even though Heiter is a corrupt priest, he's not the best at his job. He believes in it enough that it guides him to actually start practicing in it. So just as Himmel taught him to be a hero and be concerned for people, the belief he has in the divine guides him to do the same thing, even if he's not the best at it. So it's kind of like he's very frank about admitting his own flaws while practicing his faith in real terms. So very bizarre, very intriguing scene. I can't wait to see what we're building up to with this. That's all I want to say about book one. It's an excellent example of a outsider Japanese perspective looking at Christianity from outside and trying to see the beauty or see the wonder in it, even if it's kind of like a very simplistic, I would say kind of like, there's no Christ figure in their religion. We don't see any of the details of their theology. It's very much like the aesthetic of Christianity, but it's respectful while not being from a Christian perspective. That's what kind of intrigued me about it. All right, we'll talk more as I get more of these books. Love you guys. Catch you later.